The person you are at work is not the person you are at home. The version of you that wants intimacy hates the version that craves solitude. You are not one coherent self. You are a collection of selves in constant negotiation. Here's what most people refuse to acknowledge. You do not have a single, unified identity. You have multiple selves, each with different desires, different values, different versions of what your life should look like. These selves do not cooperate. They compete for control. They contradict each other. They take turns dominating your behavior depending on context and mood. What you call your personality is just whichever self won the most recent internal battle, and the losing selves do not disappear. They wait. They resurface. They sabotage the victories of the dominant self when the opportunity arises. This is not a metaphor. This is the structure of human psychology, and recognizing it changes how you understand every choice you have ever made. You present yourself to the world as a consistent person, someone with clear values, predictable behavior, a stable sense of who you are and what you want. This presentation is necessary for social functioning. People need to believe they are dealing with the same person each time they interact with you. Employers need to trust you will show up as the competent professional. Partners need to believe you are the caring, committed person they fell in love with. But you know this is a performance. You know there are moments when a completely different version of you takes over. The responsible adult vanishes and someone reckless emerges. The loving partner disappears and someone cold and distant shows up. The ambitious professional dissolves and someone who wants to abandon everything surfaces. You tell yourself these are moods, temporary states, bad days, but they are not temporary states. They are other selves, and they are just as real as the version you prefer to identify with. Watch how this plays out in everyday decisions. You decide to start exercising regularly. The part of you that wants health and discipline makes this decision. It feels good. It feels like progress. It feels like you are finally becoming who you should be. Then another self wakes up. This self does not care about future health. It wants comfort now. It wants to stay in bed. It wants to avoid discomfort. And it is just as much you as the disciplined self. These two selves have fundamentally incompatible desires. One wants the long-term benefits of discipline, the other wants the immediate pleasure of indulgence. You cannot satisfy both, so they fight, and whichever one is stronger in that particular moment determines your behavior. When you skip the workout, you do not lack willpower. You just became a different person, a person who values comfort over health, a person who prioritizes the present over the future. Both people are you. Neither is more authentic than the other. This division becomes most visible around morality. You have a self that wants to be good, ethical, compassionate, fair. This self makes promises. It commits to values. It judges others for their moral failures. But you also have a self that resents these constraints. A self that wants what it wants without guilt, that envies others who have more, that takes pleasure in small cruelties disguised as honesty. The moral self cannot acknowledge this shadow self exists. To do so would shatter the image it maintains, so it represses awareness of these darker impulses. It attributes them to temporary weakness. It frames them as aberrations rather than as a permanent part of your psychological structure. But the shadow self does not go away because you ignore it. It expresses itself in indirect ways, through sarcasm that cuts deeper than humor should, through forgetting to do favors for people you resent, through small acts of sabotage disguised as accidents, through judgment of others that reveals your own repressed desires. When you criticize someone for being selfish, you are often criticizing the selfishness you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. When you judge someone for their weakness, you are judging the weakness you have exiled from your conscious identity.
The shadow speaks through what you condemn in others. Then there are the selves you become in different social contexts. You are one person with your family, someone else with your colleagues, someone entirely different with strangers. Another version emerges with close friends, yet another one when you are alone. These are not slight variations, they are fundamentally different characters. The self that exists at family gatherings might be conflict avoidant, accommodating, stuck in childhood patterns of seeking approval. The self at work might be assertive, strategic, entirely comfortable with confrontation. If your family saw you at work, they might not recognize you. If your colleagues saw you with your family, they would wonder where the competent professional went. You know this. You feel the shift happen as you move between contexts. You feel yourself becoming a different person as you walk through different doors. What you do not acknowledge is that all these selves have equal claim to being the real you. There is no core self underneath waiting to be discovered. There is only the collection of selves that emerge in response to different environments and demands. This fragmentation creates a specific kind of suffering. You make promises one self cannot keep because another self will be in control when the time comes to fulfill them. You commit to relationships one self wants while another self will sabotage them. You pursue goals one self values while another self undermines the effort required to achieve them. This is why you feel like you are at war with yourself, because you are, not metaphorically, literally. Different selves with different agendas are competing for control of your behavior, and the self that makes the decision is often not the self that has to live with the consequences. The self that drinks too much is not the self that wakes up with the hangover. The self that sends the angry message is not the self that has to repair the relationship damage. The self that makes ambitious plans is not the self that has to do the tedious work of executing them. You are a committee trying to run a single life, and the committee members do not agree on what that life should look like. So look at your inconsistencies with new eyes. The inconsistencies in your behavior are not character flaws. They are evidence of multiple selves operating without coordination. The person who cannot stick to commitments is not weak. They are multiple people making commitments they will not all honor. The person who acts out of character is not having a bad day. They are simply being a different character, one that exists alongside all the others. You want to believe you are one person who occasionally behaves inconsistently, but the truth is harder. You are many people who take turns inhabiting the same body, and most of the time, you have no idea which self will be in control when it matters most. You are not one person. You are a fragmented collection of selves, each with its own desires, each with its own values, each with its own version of who you should be. The self reading this right now might understand and agree, but tomorrow a different self will be in charge, and that self might not care about this insight at all. The ambitious self makes plans the lazy self will not execute. The loving self makes promises the resentful self will break. The moral self judges behaviors the shadow self quietly enjoys. They do not cooperate, they do not compromise, they simply take turns controlling your behavior, often without your conscious awareness of the shift. This is why you feel inconsistent, why you cannot trust yourself, why you make the same mistakes despite knowing better. You do know better, one of you does, but that is not the self who will be making the decision when the moment arrives. You are not one person. You are many people taking turns inhabiting the same body, and they are not on the same side.